British warplanes have carried out airstrikes against Islamic State positions inside Iraq. Let's get straight to London then. Our correspondent Polly Boyker has the latest there for us. What more do we know at this point, Polly?
Well, the RAF's Tornado jets have been flying out over Iraq for some days now, but these have been the first strikes carried out. Now, the RAF Tornadoes were tasked with helping Kurdish forces in northwest Iraq, and today those Kurdish forces were under attack from ISIL militants somewhere near the Mosul Dam, as I said, in northwest Iraq. And the planes flew over and they identified one of ISIL's heavy weapon positions, which is thought to have been a machine gun post, and that's where ISIL militants were shooting at the Kurdish forces, and so the RAF Tornado jets identified that machine gun post and launched an attack on it. Now, following that, they also identified an ISIL pickup truck and attacked that position too. So 2 strikes were carried out, and the MOD has released a statement saying that, according to their initial assessment, those strikes were successful. Now, British planes have been flying over Iraq for several weeks now. They had been carrying out surveillance operations up until late last week, when really the whole country's now been holding their breath waiting for these strikes, because British politicians voted overwhelmingly in favour of joining up to the anti-IS coalition, and we've been waiting for these strikes since the beginning of this week, really. But there are fears that IS militants are approaching Baghdad, and perhaps, according to some reports, just an hour away from reaching the Iraqi capital. So I think reports of these strikes will probably allay some of those fears for the people who support them here in Britain.
All right, Polly, thanks for the update for now. Let's get some thoughts from Craig Roberts. He's from the think tank Institute for Political Economy. Hi there, thanks for being on the line with us. So, OK, Britain's now on board. Those tornadoes have carried out a couple of strikes. That's what we've officially heard in the last half hour or so after doing that earlier reconnaissance mission. I've just come back from the UK myself in the last couple of days. So many warnings, though, that Britain's being drawn into a trap here. ISIS is going to want to bring this on, and that anyway, a couple of strikes by tornadoes isn't going to make any difference.
That's right. It will make no difference. The prospect for Washington prevailing against the Islamic State is no better than the prospect of prevailing against the Taliban. The purpose of these wars is to provide a reason for the $1 trillion annual budget of the military security complex. It's very difficult to have such massive expenditures without a cause, without a reason. And so restoring the war in the Middle East is the reason. I think Washington had hoped to replace the Middle Eastern wars with a new Cold War with Russia. But Vladimir Putin said he was not going to participate. So I think that sent Washington back to the Middle East.
Of course, if you aren't involved in the arms industry, just a person maybe sitting at home somewhere in the west of Europe or maybe in America, you just want a job, you want to look after your wife and kids, do whatever you want to do. This is a big worry. We've got Theresa May, the Home Secretary today, putting the fear into people, thinking, saying that there's a big, genuine worry that ISIS could get hold of nuclear material, maybe make a dirty bomb. We also heard those reports of Iraq saying they had evidence that ISIS wanted to bomb subways in America and also in Paris. To catch America off guard, that one. But it does worry people at home. You think, though, that this is just basically a plan by America to keep its huge arms industry going? Sure, there's more to it than that, isn't there?
Well, that is one of the most important reasons. There is another reason, and that is the neoconservative ideology of American hegemony and the earlier neoconservative plan to cause turmoil throughout the Middle East and overturn even Saudi Arabia. So all of that may be part of it. But look, we've been hearing these threats and fears now for the entirety of the 21st century. Remember, Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. There was going to be a nuclear mushroom cloud over an American city. We heard all sorts of lies about Gaddafi.
So what does Islamic State want here? It wants to draw in America, it wants to draw in Britain and its allies, etc., etc., and the American allies. It wants to draw troops in on foot on the ground. Yeah,
Yes, because what it does, it creates more support for the Islamic State. In my opinion, we don't really know.
So what should be done?
We can't believe Washington, we can't believe the Western media, but in my opinion, these so-called jihadists are redrawing the artificial boundaries created by the French and British after World War I. And they are also trying to mobilize a fierce resistance to Western colonialism.
So should America and the West let them get on with it? But how can they, with so many vested interests in the oil, etc. there, just to name one thing?
The question, Kevin, is what can the West and Washington do about it? After 13 years, they couldn't defeat the Taliban. After an 8-year war in Iraq, we now have the country dominated by the Islamic State. After overthrowing Gaddafi, we have a total chaos. You know, this Islamic State, this was created out of the forces that the CIA used to overthrow Gaddafi and sent to Syria to overthrow Assad. So these are people who outfoxed their handlers. What can Washington do about it? It's boots on the ground again. After 8 years, it couldn't occupy Baghdad. What's Washington going to do?
So briefly, your
against the Islamic
prognosis.
State?
Your prognosis, final 30 seconds, where do you personally think this is going to go?
More expense, a way of justifying the military security budget, a way of keeping the American public afraid so they accept the police state at home. That's where it's going, the same place it's gone for the entirety of the 21st century. There's no change.
Life tends to repeat itself, doesn't it? As they say. Craig Roberts, thanks ever so much from think tank, the Institute for Political Economy.